If you've ever been told you need to work on your executive presence, but no one could explain what that actually meant, this video is for you. Because most executive presence advice hasn't kept up with how leadership works anymore. And in 2026, trying to follow outdated advice doesn't just not help you, it could actually make things worse.
Welcome to The Self-Led Leader, a podcast for high performers who want to lead from alignment, not expectation. I'm Dr. Christina Ady, a social psychologist, and I'm here to help you lead with clarity, not chaos. This show is about what happens before the strategy, your mindset, your nervous system, the inner leadership that shapes everything you say and do. Because presence isn't about being loud, it's about being aligned. Let's get right into it.
You see, most leaders are given the same vague advice. Work on your confidence, be more charismatic, speak up more, take up space. But what does that actually mean? And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But here's the thing that's overlooked. By 2026, leadership and the corporate space has changed. Leaders just aren't held to the same expectations anymore because the workplace has changed. With the rise of work from home, the normalization of virtual meetings, the exposure to social media and a global workplace, things just aren't the same. And relying on outdated advice isn't just a disservice, but the issue lies in not understanding what that advice actually means when everyone has a different definition. Because how one person defines confident leadership versus how your coworker defines a charismatic leader can be completely different. And so not only do you not know which advice to follow, but you don't know which definition to lean into. And the thing is, executive presence in today's standards isn't evaluated by how much you're able to perform. It's evaluated by how you come across, especially under pressure. So when you're looking at this generic advice that keeps telling you to add in behaviors, well, it's no wonder that it's not working, because the real issue is something else entirely. You see, executive presence isn't about confidence. It isn't about faked charisma. It's not about being extroverted as your personality. And it definitely isn't about performing leadership to whatever standard you think you should. Executive presence is actually about how you are perceived, especially under pressure. It's the pattern of your behavior that others have come to expect from you. You see, regardless of your expertise, your credibility, and the amazing things that you have done, before anyone actually evaluates the credibility of your ideas, they first unconsciously decide whether you, as an individual, are worth following in leadership. Whether your judgments are trustworthy, whether you're someone who seems credible as an individual and not just based on the ideas you're presenting. And this is based on the signals that you're sending. You see, whether you realize it or not, you are always sending 3 core types of signals. That's through your internal state, your communication patterns, and your nonverbal presence. Now, here's what most advice overlooks. They treat these signals as separate components of leadership, when in reality, all 3 work together as a system. They intertwine to create who you are, how you think, and how you show up, which creates the behavioral patterns that people expect from you, and hence your executive presence. You see, all 3 signals are always evaluated together, especially when you're in the leadership position. And when all 3 signals come together and are coherent, that is when people feel like you are credible, influential, and trustworthy. But when you're sending mixed signals, well, people hesitate, they feel uncertain, and they're not sure if you have that leadership potential, even if you're highly competent and skilled. You see, most people overlook these signals. And psychologically, there is always a disconnect between how we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us. There's a fundamental attribution bias where we think that the amazing qualities that make up who we are visible and are evident and are obvious to other people, so that our hard work, the time and effort that we put in, is just automatically acknowledged by other people. But here's the catch. We all attribute our own hard work and progress and effort to our success, but we attribute luck, circumstances, and external factors to other people's success. And so even though you may know that you've put in the work, you've stayed after hours, you put your blood, soul, and tears into this work, other people aren't making that association, not nearly as deeply as you are. And so it's important that you're not waiting for your work to speak for itself, or you're waiting for other people to acknowledge your expertise and credibility. It's important that you're sending out the right signals so that you're coming across as someone who is hardworking, who is credible, and who has the habitual pattern of showing up as a trustworthy leader, who puts in the time and effort and has made that a core aspect of who they are, so that there is no misattribution around your success and your achievements. When working with my clients, I help them unpack executive presence into 4 core pillars of how they show up, how they interact with their team, and how they come across to everyone in their organization. That includes your presence, your communication skills, your ability to maintain relationships, and the way you appear and express yourself. But for simplicity and for the sake of this video, so that you walk away with tangible things to work on today, I'm going to simplify this into 3 core traits that you need to work on to make your executive presence stand out in 2026. And that is your emotional intelligence, your communication skills, and your non-verbal cues. Let's unpack these. So 2026, the world has changed. How we operate, how we work, how we understand each other has changed. And with the rise of AI, with the rise of interconnected global teams, emotional intelligence has become more important than ever. And so when you're working on your executive presence, it's not just about working on how you speak or the things you say. It's about understanding the fundamental nature in which you show up and the way that you interact with other people. And emotional intelligence is a massive part of that. You see, psychologically, people make evaluations about each other in microseconds. And how you make someone feel in a conversation, the way that someone feels after a meeting that you've run, these are all parts of how you are evaluated on your leadership skills. And so your executive presence is felt emotionally just as much as it's acknowledged conceptually. And so your emotional intelligence in this context is your ability to not only stay regulated, to hold emotional capacity for others, but to understand differing points of view and maintain working relationships through uncomfortable moments, difficult conversations, or tense situations. You see, it's your job to be able to regulate the emotional state of your team rather than expecting your team to react to your emotional state. Now let me unpack this more. As the leader, as someone with executive presence, it is foundational that you're able to understand your own emotions, how to regulate yourself under stress or pressure, and how to hold emotional capacity so that if you disagree with someone, if you're receiving negative feedback, if there's a tense situation, you're able to maintain your cool and show up collected and calm rather than blowing up, becoming tense, taking things personally, or lashing out at your team. And so ask yourself, how often are you being reactive versus how often are you being responsive? And the difference is this. If you're being reactive, you are letting your emotions get the best of you. Whatever situation is coming up, no matter how many fires you're fighting that day, you are letting them control how you feel. But if you're being responsive, you understand that your emotions do not decide how you act. Your emotions do not control the actions that you decide to take. And so if there's a tense situation, an uncomfortable conversation, some difficult feedback, something unexpected, stressful, you understand how to re-regulate yourself in the moment, take time if you can and need to, and respond logically, consciously, and in everyone's best interests, rather than based on how you're feeling in that particular moment. If you're someone who is just starting to work on your emotional intelligence, here is one micro practice I want you to implement starting today. Moving forward, before every meeting, during every difficult conversation, or anytime you start to feel a little flustered, ask yourself this: am I trying to prove something about myself, or am I here to resolve this situation? Because when you're trying to prove something about yourself, you are letting your emotions and your ego get the best of you. That stems from a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-belief, the tendency to want to prove that you're worth this and you're smart and you're talented and you're fill in the blank. And that is not productive because that is completely self-centered. But when you understand how to contribute and how to resolve the situation, you put your own ego aside. It's not about proving that you're smart. It's not about proving that you're worthy of having this position or that your position is so needed and they need you as an individual. It's about taking yourself out of the equation and handling the situation for the greater good of your team, your organization, your goals. And so do this micro practice. When you start to feel flustered, stress, or the urge to justify something that you said, ask yourself, am I here to prove or am I here to contribute? And always lean towards contributing first. And that's how you develop the emotional intelligence that you need with your executive presence. Because confident people, secure people, they don't need to prove their confidence. They don't need to prove their competence to everyone else. They fundamentally know that they are and they act accordingly. And that's what I'd like you to do moving forward as well. Now, the second major skill set that you're going to work on is your communication skills. Now, your communication isn't just about sounding competent or credible. It's not about being articulate or extremely polished. Your communication skills are one of the biggest signals that you're sending for other people to pick up on and make judgments about whether you are competent or uncertain. You see, people don't just listen to what you say. They listen and make assumptions about how easy you are to trust based on what you're saying and how you're saying it. See, I always say that your words are the windows to your subconscious mind. And anytime you think, feel, or have this uncertainty, this hesitation, this self-doubt, it will come through in the way that you speak. That's when filler words come in, over-explaining, losing your train of thought, rambling and talking in circles. When I work with clients, I typically see that this is not just a lack of communication skills, but these types of behaviors stem from your mindset and your lack of self-belief. I want you to start to look at the patterns of your communication and how you show up as a leader. Do you articulate your thoughts in the same way regardless of who's in the room? Or do you find that the more high pressure situations you're in, the more stressed out you are, your communication patterns change? That is a very big sign that your executive presence lacks there. You see, someone with executive presence is able to maintain their calm because they've worked on their emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. And they understand that how they communicate is a massive reflection of how they come across. And so when you're working on your credibility and your influence, it's not just about the words that you're saying, it's about how you deliver them. And learning to be calm, remain certain, and to trust yourself to deliver the message, even if you feel a little bit of uncertainty. Now, the biggest way that I see leaders start to break this pattern is to add in qualifying language to try and protect themselves a little bit from making the wrong decision, from saying the wrong thing, or from giving advice that they're worried will not work out. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to audit your language and really look out for how many qualifiers you're using. Now, qualifying language is adding in words or phrases that take you from being certain to a little bit softer in your stance. This often looks like using phrases like I think, possibly, maybe, I could be wrong, but, I think we should try possibly this. It's using phrases that really diminish your credibility in an attempt to protect yourself from making the wrong decision. Now, don't get me wrong. Making the wrong decision can be intimidating and scary, but it is part of the process. Because any leader will tell you wrong decisions come with the job. No one is right 100% of the time, but showcasing your hesitation, giving clues of your uncertainty, using language that makes you seem less credible and therefore less influential is only harming your executive presence. Because if you think about it, who would you rather give the promotion to? The person who's always unsure, or the person who's able to make a decision, take a stance, and deal with the consequences effectively if there are any? You see, using a few qualifiers here and there isn't bad, and we all do it naturally. But overusing them, that is when you're harming your credibility and signaling that you have hesitation and self-doubt. And so your micro practice for this week is to pay attention to your conversations and really audit your language patterns. How often do you find yourself in a meeting saying, I think, I'm not sure, but, maybe just look out for these language patterns and work on removing them completely. It will feel uncomfortable at first, but you will find it makes a massive difference in how you come across, especially in your meetings. Now, the third category that you're going to work on to develop your executive presence this year is really your body language and understanding how you express yourself. You see, anytime you speak, you are sending two massive types of signals. Your verbal signals through the language that you use, and your visual signals, so how you look while delivering that message. Both have to be aligned for your message to land. Both need to be giving the same green lights for people to trust you and for you to have influence in the way that you communicate. But if you are saying one thing, but you look uncertain, you look hesitant, you look like you don't even believe yourself, well, those are the mixed signals that are harming your executive presence without you even realizing. And psychologically, people aren't going to follow what you say, they're going to trust what they see. And working with leaders, I see that body language and your nonverbal expression is one of the most overlooked aspects of how you come across with your executive presence. So let's break this down a little bit further. It's important to understand that your body language matters whether you are in person or virtual. Arguably, I would say that virtual settings impact how you come across with your body language even more, because rather than seeing you, your environment, the circumstances, the room that you're in, when you're on a virtual call, you are limited to the little square that shows your face, maybe your upper body, depending on how you've set it up. And so every single posture change, every single bit of fidgeting, every bit of slouching or frightened expressions, those come through even more. Now, some of the biggest mistakes that I see leaders make with their body language is not fully optimizing how they look to others, because fundamentally they haven't taken the time to understand how they express themselves on a regular basis. Now, you see, we all have ways, language patterns, and habits in how we talk. Some people talk with their hands quite a lot, some people don't. Some people fidget, some people shake their head, some people move around a lot. And it's important to understand what your baseline is and how you are coming across to others. Because when you understand your starting point, that is when you can begin to optimize your body language to come across as more confident, as more charismatic, as more of these traits that are associated with executive presence without being fully explained. When you understand what you're starting from, that is when you can either add in the right changes or remove things that are causing friction. So let me give you an example. Are you someone who tends to sit with very good posture, or are you someone who tends to slouch on a regular basis? Knowing what you do habitually is how you start to understand how to change your posture and which situations to change your posture in. And so I want you to go through and think about the big things that you're doing. So how's your posture? How are you sitting? And what facial expressions do you tend to make? But then I want you to also consider the micro signals that you're sending. If you're uncertain, do you tend to fidget more? If someone says something that you disagree with, do you tend to change the facial expression that you're making? If someone's talking in a meeting and you're getting bored, are you visibly zoning out or getting frustrated? If someone on your team is rambling while delivering their update, are you rolling your eyes for your entire team to see? Every single micro signal, no matter how small, creates that behavioral pattern that I talked about. And so in these modern leadership environments, whether you're in the boardroom or on a Zoom call, the micro signals that you're sending, especially if you're sending them habitually and consistently, they matter because they add up to who you are and what your reputation becomes. And so, as you work on your executive presence this year, here's what I want you to do. Start adding in stillness. That's right. One of the biggest signs that you are hesitating, feeling uncertain or unsure is through movement and fidgeting. That is one of the biggest visual giveaways. If I say something that you disagree with and you start changing your position, that lets me know you are feeling uncomfortable. If we are trying to have a conversation and you keep tapping your fingers or playing with your pen, that's an indication that you're either anxious or you don't want to be there. If you're delivering an update and you're constantly moving or speaking really fast and moving your arms erratically, that is an indication to me that you are feeling anxious about what you're saying. And so on the flip side, one of the biggest signs of confidence is understanding how to use silence and stillness to your advantage. And so I want you to first understand how often you're fidgeting, how often you're moving erratically, how often you are giving off visual signals that you're not confident in what you're doing and what you're saying. But number two, I want you to start implementing stillness into your speech patterns and your behavioral patterns. So anytime someone on your team finishes speaking, have a moment of silence for 2 to 3 seconds. Give everyone a chance to process what you said. Let it land before you speak or interject. When you're finished making your point, sit still. Don't look around, don't move, don't start rambling and moving on to the next part. Learn to make stillness your superpower. Rather than trying to move on, interject, or change the topic, when you understand how to let your words land, how to use a pause effectively, and how to sit still, this is what's going to signal coherence, confidence, and credibility. So it's 2026. Executive presence isn't built by adding in a ton of behaviors anymore. It's not about faking confidence, faking charisma, or trying to be an extroverted people pleaser. It's understanding who you are fundamentally, how you function, and how to optimize that through the signals that you're sending in the way that you hold space, in your emotional capacity, in your language patterns, and in your verbal expressions. The leaders who are being promoted, who are being trusted, they're not the loudest or the most visible in the room. They're the ones who are making an impact with their presence, with the way that they lead their teams, and the credibility with which they're coming across naturally. You see, you don't need to worry about fixing everything about who you are and optimizing for everything that you think you lack. It's about understanding the signals that you are always sending and removing the noise from those so that your coherent, natural, credible self can come through. And so if executive presence feels vague or frustrating to you and you want to understand more about the signals that you're already sending, go ahead and check out the resource I've created for you. It's the 180 Signals Assessment that will take you through exactly the types of signals that you're sending, where you're overlooking some possible mistakes that you're making, and how to optimize them according to your personal psychology and personality. Because I fundamentally believe that you have to understand yourself first before you're able to optimize effectively. And so 2026 is the year that executive presence stops feeling vague, mysterious, or frustrating to you, and it starts to be something that you are naturally confident in. Because executive presence isn't just something you turn on or fake. It's a fundamental reflection of who you are and how you choose to show up. And that is not a personality trait, it's a skill that you can learn and develop in yourself. And so I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers to your 2026.